So you want to just pull up the terminal so that we can get started there? All right, cool. So are you familiar with the terminal? Have you used it before?
Not really.
Okay. So let me just show you. I think one of the most important things about the terminal is you want to realize that this interface inside of here is the same as Finder. It's just another version of Finder. Make sense?
Sure.
So, like for example, the way that you transition between them is you can use the open keyword. So open is you'll learn it's actually a program in OS X. But one of the nice things is it lets you switch between them. So if you use open and then the dot character, then you can show the same folder that you are in terminal in Finder. So this particular directory, which is the home directory, it's represented as the name of your username in Finder. That make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the desktop, which again is the same thing. It's the same thing we see in the desktop, and then also we see it like in Finder here. Cool.
Gotcha. Yep.
So hopefully we have a version of Ruby here. So the program called which helps us find out. Yep, it says we're using Ruby. That's the one for RBNB, which is great. And we can see which version, and it's 2.1.3, which is a great version. And we can also see what version of Rails we have. Okay, it's 4.1.8, which is a great version as well. So now what we're going to do is we're going to create a new Rails app, and we can do that with Rails new. And then we say the name of the app we want to build. Build friendbook. And we're going to use the database called PostgreSQL. So there are lots of different choices for database, but the one that we teach in this class, which is the one that I use in real life, is Postgres. You may have Postgres installed.
I don't know.
It's okay. That's easy to get. So let's just go ahead and we'll pull it up from Chrome.
Okay.
So this is in fact the easiest way to get started with Postgres, as promised. So just download this. Oops. So we'll just install this when it gets done. Postgres, applications. All right, cool. So you know Postgres is running because it should show up with this little elephant.
Okay.
Cool. Okay, cool. So he's happy. So don't show that, but do that. All right, cool. So he's got the elephant, then you should be good for Postgres. All right, so now what this is gonna do is we're running this command in our desktop, and we're just gonna create a new Rails app for us. All right. And then what Rails does is it creates a whole bunch of different files for us, creates controllers and views and models and all kinds of stuff. This is really a scaffold for our application. So this application that we'll start with will do nothing, pretty much.
Okay.
So with that, we should be able to run Rails S or Rails server, and that'll show us our. Oops. We're not in the directory for our app, so we need to go into that directory. We use that cd command for that. We'll go over all the terminal stuff later, but Rails server runs the app for us. And so what this will tell you is that it's running. You want to go to this address in your browser, which we also call localhost. So let's go to browser. All right, so this is the empty scaffold. Everybody in class, you guys at least should have a Rails app. Success? Rails apps? Rails apps? More or less? Okay. All right, cool. So the first thing we're going to do is in that gist, the first thing we want to do is build this timeline view. So I'm going to show you how to do that pretty quickly. Hopefully we have Sublime. Maybe not. No big deal. Maybe some kind of text editor. Do you have text editor that you use, Parv? Use Atom or Sublime or anything?
It should be text edit.
Okay.
Search for that.
I think we're gonna need a little bit. So like we need like a programming text editor. So let me go ahead and we'll just get Sublime. That's the one that I like. There's a version 2 and a version 3. The version 3 is still really buggy, so I like version 2. And that will download very fast. Alright, put this right here. That on. Alright, and then we'll open up Sublime. Cool. So this is all, so far we've just like been downloading stuff from the internet, so this is all like pretty standard.
Yeah.
So we're just going to open up I like to work from my desktop, so that's why I put friendbook right on the desktop. It's easy to get to. Alright, cool. So this is the file structure for your application. And to start off with, we're going to open what I like to do is I like to use this hierarchy here. So I'm going to go to config, routes, and that'll show me all, see it's all commented. So the way you see the keyword commenting or highlighting that you get from Ruby, and all this stuff in between is comments. So the one thing that we want to do is we want to have the root of the application go to we want to show a timeline. So we're going to say timeline show. So what this is telling you is take the root of the application, map it to an action called show on a timeline controller. So we didn't really talk about what controllers are, but we'll just kind of keep playing around here, and you'll pick up, and then for real we can go back and talk about stuff. But controllers basically handle parts of your application, and you can think of them as essentially mapping URLs to do stuff. So here's timeline controller. And we're going to save this as controller.
So, quick question.
Yep.
So friendbook, what I'm looking at right now is just a Ruby file that we're editing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Just wanted to get clarity on that.
Yeah, exactly. So this is just, so when it ends in the RB extension, that's almost all of Rails is Ruby. So it just, sometimes it looks, like for example, this doesn't really look that much like a programming language if you're coming from a more traditional programming language like C or Java or something. Because it's the delimiters are less programming, more wordy. So like do and end is a delimiter, just like curly braces are in C or in Java. So this is essentially like a block for that. So there are a couple different programming constructs that we use in Ruby that are not available to us in other languages, or available in kind of weird ways in Ruby. So this is just a class, and then here we have a single method in here called show. So what we should be able to do now, Ruby and Rails are very dynamic, which means that we can make changes to our application. Oops. I want to make this slightly smaller. We can make changes to our application and not have to restart it. We already are running the Rails server in the background. So we add this new application thing, and right away we get this error message is something that you guys are very familiar with, and it's telling you that you don't have a template for the timeline controller. So let's go ahead. Back to Sublime. All right. So Rails has a lot of configurational defaults, or excuse me, conventional defaults. So this, because we said root timeline show, that maps up /, which is this route here, to timeline controller and show, and then this particular action is always looking for a template by the same name. So we'll just go ahead and give it one. So this will give me timeline. And then I'm going incredibly fast here, but I'm just kind of showing you kind of the basic stuff, and then we'll go back and talk about how it all sort of played out in a minute.
I got you.
I don't know why. Oh, there we go. There it is. We're going to say show .html.erb. So all right, cool. So now at slash we have timeline, and any other path we'll get an error that says that's not defined yet.
Okay.
So if we compare that to, oops, we're going to go to friendbook. Okay, so we're not too far off. We have timeline. We have this. So the next thing is we kind of like have these like headers and stuff, and we're building this application on Bootstrap. So, have you used Bootstrap before?
No.
Okay, Bootstrap is like it's essentially like a CSS framework that comes to us from the nice people at Twitter. And what we can do is from the getting started page. Basically shows you how to like link everything in, and what we're going to try to do next is like probably like fill out this like little bar with some like links and stuff like that. So what you can do is on any page you can always do view page source, and it'll show you kind of how it's set up. So this little block here is actually the dynamic piece of the app, and the rest of this is all kind of static. And you set that up through a layout. You have a layout in here called application, and see how there's this yield tag. This is like the special dynamic piece, and then this is like the rest of it is all sort of like it's like the static stuff. So this will be like a header. It'll be on every page. So this will be like, I guess what we're doing.
And how did you identify that when you viewed the source page?
Oh, well, you wouldn't know that necessarily. I just know that because I built this little part of the app here.
Oh, I see.
This is as I'm moving around, you can see how the temp that header is always in the same place, but they're the header and footer too. But the middle part is what kind of changes. And that's pretty common in websites. That's why you have these layouts. So I'm going to go ahead and so what you could do for a second is just kind of experiment with like putting things in. Let's find yourself. Let's make one other route actually. Since you have a template controller, let's go create one for the friends, and then I'll let you experiment with like those controllers and modifying the layouts and the views. So we're going to go back to routes and we're going to say there's a special keyword called resources, which essentially defines a RESTful resource or a collection of things that can be manipulated. Think of any like web app, you'll have like these resources scattered around. So it'll be like, maybe it's a to-do list app, or you have like resource of items, or a Facebook clone where you have a resource of friends. So we're gonna create a resource of friends. And what that gives us is that gives us a list of friends, and the ability to add and create friends, and also delete friends. Rails is really big on convention, so if you have a resource called friends, it expects you to have a controller also called friends. So here we're going to create a friends controller. Application controller. And the method that we're particularly interested in is the one called index, which is the list of friends. That's the one that is implemented here. Shows you all the friends. So we're going to build that in your app. There's no link right now to that list of friends, so let's go ahead. We'll add one to the top here. So anywhere we're using this percent less than or percent greater than, that's where we're embedding Ruby code inside of the HTML. So here we're going to make a path, we're going to use the link to helper, which helps us to build links correctly. And we're going to say friends path. And this is actually a function that gets defined by Rails for us. Okay, so here's friendbook, here's the friends thing, and if we go to that, we go to /friends, and we get that familiar template is missing. And so what we're going to want to do is fill that in. I'll leave it to you to see if you can guess how to fill that in with something, just to return something besides an error on this page, just to have something like timeline, just like some words. Okay? I'm gonna check around. Go ahead.
Going back to the thing you just wrote, yeah. So the li with the so that created a link to this page.
Yep.
Not created yet.
Yep.
And then what is the friends path?
Well, I would take a look at if you inspect element on here. You can look this stuff up. So basically, the capital friends that's the text, and then links they have kind of as a big part of their sort of their existence. They have a path, so they have to be where you want to go. So that's what the friends path is. That controls where to go.
Oh, I see.
And you'll see this is it's all very well documented. So if you go to api.rubyonrails.org, this is kind of like the site that everybody goes to all the time. You can learn about these link to helpers, and it pretty much explains exactly how these work. Here.
So it's just the structure of how Ruby handles links.
Yeah, well, this is actually part of the framework. So this is saying this is how you build links. So it takes a URL as the second option. And this whole path thing is kind of more a part of, it's a different part of Rails.
Okay.
Make sense? This is kind of like, again, this is a really speedy tour. We go into this in a lot more detail in this class, and everybody already knows how to do this stuff. So I'm just kind of doing it faster, just to show you how you keep up. Make sense?
Yeah, so far.
Okay.
From the limited.
See if you can resolve this error.
Okay.
You can read the error real closely and then see if you can figure out how to fix it. All right. So in the meantime, yeah, basically, you can start with a bar, and just go like 2 routes, and go a route where I had the timeline, and then I started with a route where I had friends, and so I had to show the friends. I said, go ahead and try to build it. Here's your timeline, it's really cool. That's totally what I would do. Nicely done, TJ. Very nicely done. Anyways, then. Okay. Alright, that's fine. I think this is a really good thing to do. Try to
could have a whole list of users.
If you suck, let me know.
But we're discussing the relationship with like user as as far as the friends list is concerned, would that just be a list of
so probably what I would do is the couple ways we did. So you have this you have the list of people in the system who are all friends control and talent control. Alright, so you really want to get here. Alright, so you really want to get here. So I think one way you can think about this, right, is that timeline, that's really all the posts in the system filtered in with friends.
yeah.
That would be a way I think you think I would think about that.
And the way we determine who we're friends with, is that like a or is that like it's either its own list instead of it or could it
So that would be a way to right? I would say it would be no more of a So you can imagine the reason I say to reserve the idea of friend is that probably would end up with this.
Friends list belongs to the user or
No chance one is
I'm just gonna go with
So what I would probably model it as you've got a user, and they are going to have many friends, and those friends are actually users. So a friend has one.
friends list.
I should probably just call it this the friends table. Users have many friends.
That's one friends.
Yeah, and then friends have one user. And so this will point into the user ID will end up as a there'll be two references to the users table per friend entry. So you can imagine, and that will make all the Rails relationships work really, really well. So users will have many friends, and each friend will then point back into the users table to a certain user. So that would be how I would generalize that. And that way, for example, we've got Hank and Ian. Ian's going to go ahead. Let's ignore the idea of the whole like accepting friends for a second. But if you want to add Ian as a friend, you guys are both users of the system. So we'll create an entry in the friends table that is owned by you, belongs to you, and it points to it has one user, which is Ian. Now, how will you know if Ian is friends with Hank? So you've got Hank, you've got Ian, they're both in here. So the friends list, these are users. So here's an entry in the let's say there's a user ID, and friend ID. So you have one thing where you have Hank is the user ID and Ian is the friend ID. And then what you probably end up as another row is actually the opposite. So you have Ian and Hank. And that lets you index it and find them very, very efficiently. And then if you dismantle a friendship, you just delete both rows. So then in your post example, what you're going to want to do, you go through all your friends and say, okay, now I have, because in Rails you very, very efficiently say, give me all my friend IDs. Because now you're going to say, filter the friends list where this is my user ID, select the friend ID. Now I have a group of them. Maybe if I have 500, no problem. Now in a second query, I can say, give me all the posts where user ID is this thing. Now I can list them. Posts are very, very efficient. Cool. Yeah, so I think this thing will make more sense. You could model it the way you're talking about with the array of friends. And in fact, there are many people that would say that that's a very, very efficient model because you don't have to do that original query if you go through all those different places. But that's not been the way that we've traditionally built Rails applications. And that's more like an edge optimization that you get to later on because there are huge trade-offs in doing it that way because none of your database tools are going to work correctly with it. And like it's a very idiosyncratic modeling versus this kind of join table is very, very standard. So unless I'm running into a performance problem, I would always prefer the idiomatic solution because then it'll be easier for me to explain to people. Something that's idiosyncratic is more like unique for that. And Facebook's own implementation is really very interesting. Cool. What's that? They're all in PHP, yeah. But they use the same. They use MySQL. They don't use Postgres. But they would love to use Postgres. But their whole system is already built on MySQL. Postgres wasn't available to them when they were building Facebook. Neither was Rails. Harv, how'd you do there? Hey, Harv, how'd you do there?
So I'm trying to figure out how to get this friend book link to go to the friend book page.
Oh yeah. So you can pass anything you want in here. So what this Ruby on Rails, what this is saying here is that it just wants a URL as the second argument. So they're using parens here. Ruby has optional parens for function calling, so you can actually put whatever you want here. So like, for example, if you just put the hash sign then you'll just give this a little refresh action. Oh, you actually, the issue that you're getting is, so okay, it's always tricky to kind of read these stack traces, but it's saying unknown regular expression option I unmatched close of parentheses. And so it's saying, and it says syntax error, then it says unterminated. So what this is basically trying to tell you is that something is not closed, and the thing that's not closed is your tag. So these little tags, they begin with this and they end with that.
Yeah.
So that'll result in error. And so now you've got hash as the thing here.
Right.
And so anything you write in here is fine. But what'll happen is that this won't route correctly because we don't have anything set up to handle that path.
Right.
So
how do I get, like, how you have a friend underscore path, like, file to direct that to?
Sure. Yeah. So
how do I get the friend book page to show up?
Well, so that's all going to be based on your routes. So right now you've got 2 routes, and if you go to a bad location, it'll actually show you all the routes that are in your system here under this routes file. And if you notice, you've got friends path that's defined by Rails. That's because I've got resources friends here. So resources friends gives you all of this stuff for free. That's what the resources keyword does.
Cool.
So if you want that, let me just duplicate this tab here. So if you want this friend book here to go back to the home page, which is what I did. So let's go. Then the path that you want to use is none of these here, but you see any other paths on this page? It's actually the root path. That's what you actually want there, is the root path.
Okay.
So that's like, again, we're like really diving in deep here without kind of covering any of the basics. So I wouldn't get too worried about it, but yeah, you just want the root path there. That'll make it so that goes to, that's never going to do anything. But this will go to slash now, and that'll go to friends.
So on one of the other pages, on the routes file that you were looking at,
yep.
Why do we have to have the resources command or whatever for friends, but not for the friend book link that we just created?
Well, so that actually comes to us from line 3, where it says root. So the root that defines something at slash. That's like a special case.
Okay. Gotcha.
That's just
but
a
if
special
it was any other page.
Yeah, exactly. So in fact, if we go here and we say resources, enemies, and then we go back to that thing where it lists out all the routes, we see we get the enemies path, new enemy path, edit enemy, and enemy path. So all these paths get defined right now. So you get a chance. Anything that you define under resources, you get all those paths for free. That makes sense? So why don't you try and get a link to the new enemy path. See if you can find a place where you can add an enemy. So link text would say add an enemy, and then you'll get a link to it right from the home page, somewhere in this little UL thing. All right, try that out. All right. We're gonna fake your thing. You got to fake your thing. You're adding friends. You guys, we solved the riddle of how we're gonna model the system. So you guys are adding friends now. Yeah. All right, cool. You get those. All right. But does the user have one friend? I don't think it's you.
Well, no, like. Yeah, right. It's just. I think he's looking at that. But all friends is just a list of friends.
It's a join table, right? So we're kind of like the friends are going to point to, but they all have to have ownership. So if you were the only person in the system, then this table you wouldn't need a user ID because they'd all belong to you. So if it was like imagine Facebook only had Hank on it, and only Hank can make friends with everybody, then you know that this is all filled in to you. And then you just the friends would just be a list of other user IDs. But because the user has multiple, the system has multiple users, then you need to this friends list needs to join a user to another user. So that's why that table we call it friends, but you just as easily call it user. It's like when we just think about the cart products table, it's a joining of a cart with a product. It's cart products. That's why we name it like that. Carts and carts. So, I wouldn't get too up on the relationship, because I'm just going to that right now. But I would focus on the creating that different thing, creating some users in the system. Alright. What do you think? Yes. Well, I think that one of the timelines yeah, I would say all that's happening and stuff. Like there's all right, Arif, how'd you do there?
Well,
nicely
I got
done.
the link.
Totally nicely
It
done.
doesn't go anywhere.
That's totally fine. That's no problem. All right, cool. So what do you got? Why do you have that extra dot there?
That's a great question.
So one of the things that's really nice about these kinds of programming text editors is
Yeah.
that they have what's called a monospaced font. So see how like I can kind of like, in fact, if you hold Control and Shift and then hit the down key, whoa, it'll do this by default, which is never what you want actually once you start programming. Hang on one second, let me just turn this off. It's real annoying. Mission control. Yeah, this is not at all what we want here. All right, let's try this one more time. Okay, so back to what I was saying. So if you hold Control and Shift and hit down, it'll actually make your cursor out of multiple lines, and this lets you kind of walk across stuff and compare stuff letter by letter. So if we compare letter by letter, we get to the end of path. That all looks really good. These all both have percent. Then they close this thing, and then at this point, something is not like, oh yeah. You're still in the multi-edit mode,
Except I didn't.
so you just hit escape to get out of it. You
Okay,
hit,
what did you
yeah,
press to get that?
yeah, try it again. So hit escape. Okay, so now if you want to fix that one. Okay, now if you want to get back into that multi-edit mode, it's Control Shift, and then hold, hit the up or down arrow. So hit the up arrow in this case. Control Shift up. So now you're, yeah. So now you see all the places. So you're editing those 3 LIs plus you're editing 1 down on line 14.
Yep.
Which is pretty. So this actually comes in handy a lot more than originally. You're kind of like, when am I ever going to use this? But actually, it turns out this comes in handy all the time. So, for example, if I wanted to take all of these, if I want to take all these link tos and turn them into buttons, so I can do that very, very easily like that. And that's the kind of stuff that you end up doing all the time. So, and it also helps you just to kind of line stuff up. So that when you run in a situation where like something's a little off, you just kind of look at things that are self-similar and say, what's screwed up there? But you found that no problem. That was easy. So the trick to getting these, let's resolve the next error here, which is this template missing thing. So what is this message trying to tell us?
Well,
Start at the beginning of the sentence.
we have a missing template.
Friends
Under
slash
friends slash index.
Yep. Skip all that part,
Okay.
and then just go right to here. Where did search?
Searched in this location and couldn't find it.
Yep. So let's just go put one there.
Okay.
So find app first. App. Cool. And then find views.
Use.
Yep. Okay. So then it wants friends. All right. So find friends. Oh, no, we don't have that. You better create it. Good call.
Use.
No, you had it right. Just create a new folder. You don't have. There's right. You're right. There's no folder called friends.
Okay.
So that's a file. Yeah, it's a little confusing. You want to right-click on the root, so you right-click on views, and you say new folder. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Alright. Friends.
Yeah, it turns out when it comes to programming, you almost never want to capitalize anything. So it wants you to do it.
Right.
Unless you're programming, yeah, at least for file names.
Right.
And so then it wants you to create a file called index in there. You can just hit save. It's Apple S. Yeah. All right, and then so go ahead and run your action again. So just go back to the browser and hit refresh. All right, and so then go to, and sure enough, you're on friends here. So you have nothing, which is okay because your file's empty. So why don't you go put something in your file and see if you can get it to show up. Doesn't matter, just type something. Yep, hit save. And when you go back to the browser, try, yeah, there you go. So that's working. So far so good, huh?
Yeah.
Okay. So a couple of things that I would just notice about here. First of all, your file doesn't have any extension versus these other ones do. So I would just go ahead and just like everything else, kind of want to make yours look like the other ones. And so what's the extension really doing? It's HTML.erb. See how these have two? It's a little weird, but Rails likes to give things two extensions. The leftmost extension will be the final format, and then it'll kind of like give you an idea of other things along the way. Cool. And then the one thing that's kind of weird about Sublime is it will actually keep open these file tracks that you don't want. So now you've got your index, and this gives you So now you go back over here. I always just hit Command R to refresh. There you go. So that's working. So you've got, so far so good. So you've got, get rid of this. You've got the home page that says timeline. You've got friends, and you have this enemies thing, which was just kind of an example. So we won't even worry about that. So let's go ahead. We'll get rid of the enemies path here. And we'll get it out of the route. Because we don't actually need that. Alright, so the next thing that we want to do is we want to actually create a, let's see, so now what we're going to do is on the friends list, we want to list out all the different friends we have as opposed to just this text. In my example, I had a whole bunch, all these guys here. So the way that we do that in like Rails and stuff is we have like a database, and it's going to have a table called, in this case we'll just have it be called users, and we'll fill it with a whole bunch of stuff. So let's go ahead and do that next. So the way we create a table in Rails is with a migration. So we're going to go to the terminal, and we are going to, all right guys, so I'm gonna, with ours here, I'm gonna create a migration for the users table. So if you didn't do that yet, go ahead and try to follow along here. So there is a, I say Rails is a special, so the Rails binary takes other commands. So here we're going to Rails generate migration, and the migration we're going to call add users table. So what this will do is this will create a new migration, and we can open it up in Sublime and go ahead and edit. What a migration is databases have state. So like there's like a databases like run like in this little elephant thing on your disk somewhere, and a migration is a bunch of is a single step to bring it closer to where you eventually want it to be. So your database right now is empty, and so the first step is going to be to add a single table to it. Alright, so this migration is empty. So this is a whole little syntax, but I'll just go ahead and type it in. So it's create table users, and then we're going to say do. Sorry. This takes what's called a block, which is kind of like an anonymous function. And we're going to say table string name. This is going to be the user's name. I think we actually, in this class, we use key for this. And then almost every Rails table has a timestamp column, or timestamps columns, which gives you a created at and a modified at. So this, I think, will be pretty much all we need. We'll just have names and timestamps, but just for good measure, we'll add an email, just because everybody wants emails. And we'll just say null false for both these because we don't want these columns to be nullable. So what we'll do then is we'll say Rails break DB migrate. This is like a little incantation that makes the migration go into effect. It's actually migrate. Alright, cool. So with that, we have a table called users, and if we can visualize that database, which we can do with Rails PG, Rails DB console. So this DB console, this will connect to your Postgres instance, and you can say only this is connecting to your SQLite instance. It's not what I want. Let me make sure this is set up right. Alright, well, that's okay. So I didn't set this up correctly to connect to Postgres, but honestly, that's not a big deal. I wouldn't worry about it. It's using a different database, but that's totally fine. So what I was going to say next is that what we want to do is we want to the way that Rails works is that it backs every table with a model. So we're going to create a model called a users model. So user.id. And in this case, it's actually just going to be pretty much an empty class. And so what we're going to want to do is, in our friends view, what we want to have is a UL. And we're going to have, for each of these LI, we're going to have like a friend name. Friend 1, friend 2, all the way down. And maybe the top is the friends. But rather than having it be static, so if we go here, get friends, we want it to be all the people in our system. So what we'll do is we'll use Ruby to iterate through our friends. So we're going to use a for loop. And it's actually going to be called user of the system. I lost you there.